ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानं जनाशलाकया चाक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नाम श्रेष्ठं मनुमापि सच्चिपुत्रम् अत्र स्वरूपं रूपं तस्याग्रजमुरुपुरीं मथुरीं गोष्ठावतीं राधाकुन्दं गिरिवरं महो राधिकमाधवसं प्राप्तो यस्य प्रतीतकृपया श्रीगुरुं तं नतोऽस्मि। वञ्चाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानं पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। निखिलाश्रुतिमौले रत्नमालद्युति निराजिता पदपङ्कजन्त आजीमुक्तकुलैरुपश्यामनं परितस्त्वं हरिनाम संश्रयामि। अनार्पितचरिं चिरकरुणयावतीर्णा कलो समार्पयितुं नतोऽस्मलरासं स्वभक्तिश्रियम्। हरिपुरतः सुन्दरद्युतिकदम्बसन्दीपितः सदा हृदये खन्दरे स्फुरतु भासचिनन्दना। अजानुलम्बितभुजो कनकावदातो सङ्कीर्तनैकपितरो कमलायतक्षो विश्वम्भरो धियावरो जुगधर्मपालो वन्दे जगत्प्रियकरो करुणावतारो। लादिनी शक्तिस्वरूपाय गौराङ्गासुहृदाय च भक्तशक्तिप्रदानाय गदाधर नमोऽस्तुते। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपीककान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। राधे वृन्दावनाधीशे कारुणामृतवाहिनी कृपया निजपादब्जादस्यन्मह्यं प्रदीयताम्। भक्त्या विहीनाय अपराधलक्षाय क्षिप्तशाकमाधितरङ्गमाध्ये कृपामयि त्वां शरणं प्रपन्नं वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दं वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। श्रीला गुरुदेव की जय, श्रीमन महाप्रभु की जय, श्री हरिनाम संकीर्तन की जय, ग्रंथराज श्रीमद्-भागवतम की जय, श्री वेणु-गीता की जय, श्री श्री दाऊजी गोपाल जी की जय, गौर भक्त वृंद की जय, गौर प्रमान हरि हरि बोल। So around all of you, good evening. Good evening to all the ones online connected from Srimad-Bhagavatam. And so today we are beginning a new series of lectures. In this case, we will be studying Sri Venu-gita, or the song Gita of Venu, of the flute, which is one of many Gitas. Some of them we have already been studied the last years, like Gopi-gita or like Brahmar-gita relatively recently. So today we are starting with Venu-gita, or the song of the flute, trying to complement what our Guru Maharaj will be speaking from these days on. He will be elaborating on Brahma Vimohan Lila and Brahma Stuti, the prayers of Sri Brahmaji after the Brahma Vimohan Lila, all of which is a very pivotal section of the 10th canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam concerning Sakya Bhav. So, since in our Gaudiya Sampradaya we have these two main currents, Sakya Bhav and Madhurya Bhav, I consider we can try to complement his presentation. And I asked him for his blessings and opinion, and he agreed that yes, we can go on with this Venu-gita, which is one of, we could say, 6 very well-known Gitas of the Bhagavatam, or Gopi Gitas of the Bhagavatam. Gita song, different songs presented, expressed by the Gopis in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. So as we mentioned the other day, they are mostly 6: Venu-gita, Pranaya-gita, Gopi-gita, Jugal-gita, Viraha-gita, and Brahmar-gita. So these 6 Gitas are quite important sections concerning Madhurya Bhav, and also concerning the type of Sakya Bhav which pervades our Gaudiya Sampradaya, which is Priyanarma Sakya Bhav, which is quite connected with the Madhurya side of Krishna's agenda, if you will. No? So these 6 Gopi Gitas that I'm mentioning are all sung, of course, by the Gopis, and are all sung in the spirit of viraha, or separation from Krishna. This is a very interesting point. Each one of these 6 Gopi Gitas are sung in different types of separation. We will speak about which are those different types of separation, but all of them are in the mood of separation, trying to serve to us as a window through which, through separation, we may eventually attain the desired union, whatever it may be. So again, regarding Gita, we may be more familiar with the Bhagavad-Gita. With the word Gita, our mind may go immediately to the Gita. When we say the Gita, generally we think the Bhagavad-Gita, which is the song of Bhagavan. But here we have some other Gitas which actually were sung before the Bhagavad-Gita. So maybe we could say, even if we want to take the fullest rasic implications present underlying the Bhagavad-Gita, you could say, okay, Krishna in the Bhagavad-Gita is trying to reciprocate to all the Gitas that were sung to him by the Gopis and so many other devotees in the Bhagavatam, because the Bhagavad-Gita comes again chronologically after that. So yeah, Bhagavad-Gita is the song of Bhagavan, but also Srimad-Bhagavatam is in itself a whole song in itself, divided in different cantos. Interestingly, in Spanish, canto means song also. So we could divide the Bhagavatam in songs, and each one of these cantos have different songs. Apart from the 6 songs of the Gopis, there are many others ones which appear before the 10th canto, and which will, like, if you will, grow exponentially regarding the intimacy of their content. For example, in the 4th canto, 24th chapter, there's Rudra-gita, which is the song of Lord Shiva, Rudra. So there's one Gita also. I mean, these names have been given by different acharyas. It's not that necessarily every chapter of the Bhagavatam containing these songs is called like that, but different acharyas have given these names. Mahishi Gita, for example, also in the last chapter of the 10th canto, which is the song of the Mahishis, or the queens of Dwarka, expressing their love for Krishna. Then we have in the 11th canto the famous Uddhava Gita, which is almost the whole 11th canto, basically, when Krishna is instructing Uddhava, which is kind of a parallel with the Bhagavad-Gita that Krishna speaks to Arjuna. He speaks almost the same Bhagavad-Gita to Uddhava, but in Gyan-like language, if you will. He's not speaking to a Kshatriya at that moment. Although sometimes some other acharyas consider as the Uddhava Gita 6 last prayers or verses that Uddhava recites before leaving Vrindavan. We share those in the Brahmar Gita. Those come in the 10th canto. So then also in the 11th canto, there are some other Gitas, the Bhikshu Gita, or the song of the Avanti Brahman, sometimes also known as that. We have the Aila Gita, or the song of Pururava in the 11th canto. And in the 12th canto, we also find another Gita called the Bhumi Gita, or the song of Bhumi or Mother Earth. So these are another Gitas outside of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. But we see how many Gitas are here and there, all throughout the Srimad-Bhagavatam. But here we want to concentrate on the Gitas that we find mostly in the 10th canto, of which 6 are prominent. All of these sung by the gopis again, and the very first of them, the one we are starting to study today, the Venu-gita. Of course, these 6 Gitas are intimately connected to what Mahaprabhu came to give and to what the Gaudiya Sampradaya is all about, which is Braja Prem and Raga Bhakti, or the unique type of love that we will find in Vrindavan for Sri Krishna. A very unique psychology in which their love for Krishna is not dependent on the fact that Krishna is, for example, God, which is a very unique feature of the Braj. Whenever the Brajavasis are faced with the news that Krishna is God or maybe God, their love is not increasing because of that. And whenever they are faced with the idea that actually Krishna is not God, which is most of the moments there, their love for Krishna is not decreasing because of that. So their love is not increasing nor decreasing at any moment because of the fact that Krishna may be or may be not God, but it's only increasing because it's increasing. It's not decreasing, but it's always increasing, but never because of the fact that Krishna is God or something like that, but just because Krishna is Krishna, basically. He's who he is. Swayam Bhagavan. But not so much the word Bhagavan is coming there, but Swayam, like as he is, basically. As we have Bhagavad-Gita as it is, we have Krishna as he is. So that's the Krishna edition in Vrindavan, if you will. So Mahaprabhu came to give that to the world. Prema rasa niryasan, korite ashrodan, raga marga bhakti loki, korite pracharam. He came to taste, as we know, something very unique, very particular, Krishna in the mood of Radha. And he came to extend as much as possible his own experience or whatever may be the closest to his own experience and more through a particular process called the Raga Marg, or the path of following in the wake of the inhabitants of Braj. So this Gita that we will be studying has all to do with this, with the mood of the Brajavasis, and with trying to imbibe bhakti samskars by getting closer to their expression through the lens of our acharyas, our Goswamis, who are themselves inhabitants, members of that select group, and by whose grace we can get closer and closer to what does it really mean to be an inhabitant of Braj. So this has, again, all to do with what Mahaprabhu is about. The Gaudiya Sampradaya establishes this point very clearly. There is a famous, nutshell-like description of what our Gaudiya Sampradaya is about, presented in one verse by Srinath Chakravarti. He says, Aradhya Bhagavan Braje Satanaya Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachidupasana Brajavadu Vargena Va Kalpitam Srimad-Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam Prema Pumarthumaham Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhur Matamidam Tatradhara Napara. So basically, this verse is saying, Aradhyo Bhagavam Brajesatanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam. The supreme object of worship, according to Mahaprabhu, is Krishna in Vrindavan. Not any Krishna, but Krishna in Vrindavan. He, along with his playground, with the stage for a particular lila and a particular loving expression connected to that stage. So that's to begin with, which is the goal to attain, which is the corresponding face of the Absolute, with its corresponding abode, with the corresponding bhav accompanying all that. So that's what Mahaprabhu is coming to give. Ramya Kachidupasana Brajavadur Bargena Bhakalpita. And the ultimate emotional reach of that love of Vrindavan is found in the damsels of Vrindavan, or the Braja Gopikas. So Mahaprabhu is extolling their glories through his own example, especially the position of Sri Radha, Krishna himself trying to be her and to spread her the good tidings of Radha Bhav. And then how to do that, which is the means for us to get closer to that world and to that portal, if you will. Srimad-Bhagavatam pramanamamalam primapmartamaham. So Srimad-Bhagavatam is the Amala Pramanam, or the immaculate epistemic source of revelation, something like this. The immaculate, the purest form through which we can get to know about this love of Vrindavan. So here we are there. And that will show us prema pumartamaham, how prem, or divine love, is the ultimate necessity, the ultimate meaning or purpose for human life. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matamidam Tatradhananapana. So Mahaprabhu is coming to give this current, this conception, this notion of God. So all this has to do with Braja Bhakti, Raga Bhakti, and what the Bhagavatam is about. So Srila Rupa Goswami, for example, when he describes what's Raga Nuga Bhakti about in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he basically said that Raga Nuga Bhakti sadhana, or some like systematic culture of the path, if you will, has to do when one has some specific type of desire to follow in the footsteps of the Brajavasis. In the beginning, that may be generic. I may like to follow the mood of Vrindavan, but eventually it has to become even more. I mean, that's already quite specific in comparison to other theistic opportunities, as we spoke these days. But then it will go, okay, but which associate in Vrindavan, the personification of which type of love for Krishna, and so on. And of course, one will ask how that will come out in me, or maybe it's inherent, who knows? No. So Srila Rupa Goswami is saying, actually, by exposing yourself to hear, to speak about, to study the narrations and the emotional disposition of each one of these inhabitants through shastras like Srimad-Bhagavatam mostly, gradually one will receive the specific bhakti samskars, or devotional impressions, that will take one to be inclined in one direction or another. And of course, we will add to that not only Srimad-Bhagavatam, but the books of the Goswamis, which are all of them written on the basis of the Bhagavatam. If you pay attention to each and every single book of the 6 Goswamis, they are nothing but elaborations of what the Bhagavatam is about. They're like extending the portal, if you will, making a sub-portal inside the portal, and all of them revolve around the Bhagavatam. Sandarbhas, we have Bhagavatamrita, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, commentaries on the Bhagavatam, and so on. So, and Srila Jiva Goswami in particular say, yeah, you have to listen Bhagavatam to enter into the Raga Marg, but especially 10th canto. Because again, Raga Marg is about Vrindavan. And Vrindavan in the Bhagavatam will be found in its 10th canto, its zenith, basically, where the sweet love, the activities of the people of Braj are very beautifully, transcendentally depicted. So, so again, in this Bhagavatam is where, in this 10th canto of the Bhagavatam is where we find these 6 songs. And today we will be beginning with the first of that, the Venu-gita. So Venu-gita will be basically the 21st chapter of the 10th canto of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. The whole chapter is the Venu-gita, basically. So I hope we will have time to see Venu-gita and also Pranaya-gita, which will be the second of the 6 songs. That's on the 29th canto. It's already in the Rasa Panchadhyaya section. And let's see what we do with the other ones. We already saw 2 of them. So again, Srimad-Bhagavatam, as we know, is the topmost, sweetest fruit of the tree of Vedic knowledge, Nigama Kalpataror Galitam Phalam, or it's the very essence, Sarva Vedanta Saram, the very essence of all Vedic literature, but these Gitas, it say that if the Bhagavatam is considered like the cream of all Vedic literature, I don't know, these Gopi Gitas are like the burfi of the Bhagavatam, basically. No? So out of the cream you can still distill further essence. So today we will begin then with the first of these songs, again, which is the Gopi Gita. Today will be an introductory lecture to the Venu-gita, sorry, not Gopi Gita. And from tomorrow on, we will continue with the first verse and so on. There are like 21 verses, if I'm not mistaken. But to begin with, some words about the idea of Venu, since the song is Venu-gita, so Venu generally is translated as flute. So I won't enter into too much technicality now here at this point, describing like the different types of flutes and different sub possibilities inside each division of flutes, because all that is there also in Shastra. Basically, Krishna is described having 3 types of flute: Murli, Vamsi, and Venu. Different sizes are to them. Even they're maybe made with different materials like bamboo or like gems, precious stones, and so on. But also Venu is like a generic way of referring to Krishna's flute, and the flute has to do with many things, as we know. Of course, in Shastra we will hear that the famous Omkar, Prana of Omkar, has to do with the flute. Actually, it's non-different from this. I mean, this sacred divine syllable is non-different from Krishna's flute call, which further expands into Sri Gayatri, which are all these like most sacred prototype of Vedic invocation. So all this has its background, underlying background, Krishna's flute call, which, as we know in Gaur Lila, expresses in the form of Sri Mridanga. But again, beyond the technicality of it, the flute has to do with a call, a flute call. It's Krishna pouring his heart through sound, basically. Sometimes this is called also Adaramritam. That's called like this in the Gopi Gita, Adaramritam. Many places, the word Adaramritam is the nectar of the lips, which of course can have different applications. For example, Mahaprasad, when we honor Mahaprasad, we are tasting Adaramritam. This is to say that when Mahaprabhu was honoring Jagannath Prasad in Puri, he actually was able to taste the saliva of Jagannath. So that's to honor Mahaprasad, I can tell you. It's not that there's no salt, there's no sugar. He was in another dimension of tasting. So he was tasting the nectar of the lips of Krishna. Of course, gopis will taste that when Krishna is kissing them as well. But also one form of getting in touch with Adaramritam is Venu-gita. When Krishna is singing through his flute, the nectar of his lips is the nectar of his heart is transpassing through his lips, and thus it's pouring through the holes of the flute and spreading through the whole branch, orchestrating all the different dynamics there. So when we speak about the flute, we speak about the flute call. Our Guru Maharaj likes the expression also clarion call in connection with this, like this call for everyone to fully give themselves without too much head, basically too much consideration in a calculative way, but following our most dignified instinct, if you will, as Atmas, and our potential in connection to that. Actually, the very conclusion of the Gita, we were speaking about the other Gita. Well, for a moment, let's go from Venu-gita to Bhagavad-Gita. So what's the conclusion of the Bhagavad-Gita? You tell me. Give me a break, please. Sarvadharmam parityaja. So 1866, where Krishna is saying, basically, what? Leave all dharma behind and just mamekam sharanam braja. Just take exclusive shelter in me and come to me. And come to me, the word braj, which means come, also can be taken in its most natural way of understanding it, which is come to me in braj. So that's considered the conclusion of the Gita, and Sri Prabhupada Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur will call this verse also the flute call of Krishna. He's not with the flute there in Kurukshetra. He has another paraphernalia around him. But the spirit of the verse, the ultimate application of the verse, as our acharyas even explained, that verse is only speaking about Braja Bhav and Gopi Bhav ultimately. So the flute call is this verse of the Gita. So the conclusion of the Bhagavad-Gita concludes in the flute call. The Bhagavad-Gita concludes in the flute call. So in one way, the Bhagavad-Gita is concluding in the Venu-gita. No? Because the flute call means the song of the flute. So here we find the song of the flute. The very, as we know, where the Gita concludes, the Bhagavatam is developing upon that. So this flute call, of course, again, it's not just a flute. It's not just a flute call, because everyone can play a flute and can call someone else to a flute. But which is the nature of the call, basically? That's what makes the flute call special. The flute call a clarion call, and the flute call the conclusion of the Gita. And that what makes the flute, with its call, with its song, one of the defining attributes of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, interestingly. Because Rupa Goswami, one of the different ways we can present Krishna as the most, the most refined and the more, loving expression of the Absolute, is by these different qualities that Rupa Goswami mentioned in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. He makes a list of 64 qualities Krishna has in Vrindavan, and how some of them is present in living entities only to a certain degree. Some of them are present on a higher degree on higher beings. Some of them are even present, more of them, in some avatars of Bhagavan, including even Narayan and so on. But there are 4 of them which are not present even in other forms of Krishna outside of Vrindavan. So those 4 qualities are the ones that, it's a way of saying how to establish Krishna's ultimacy, supremacy. Okay, you have Prem Madhurya, you have Rupa Madhurya, you have no, that's for the last. Say Guna Madhurya, no, Lila Madhurya. Yeah, Lila Madhurya, Rupa Madhurya, Prema Madhurya, and Venu Madhurya. So again, we go to the flute. A particular type of flute, again, Venu Madhurya. The word Madhurya is repeated in these 4 qualities. Again, Rupa Madhurya means he has a form. I wouldn't say a sweet form. He's a form of sweetness, basically. He's not that his form is sweet. But sweetness has taken a form, and that's what we call Krishna, as Guru Maharaj will say, the form of beauty. So his form is not sweet, but he's the form of sweetness, which is another level of speaking. So Rupa Madhurya, Prem Madhurya, sweet love, he's made of that again. He's not that he only has love for someone, but he's carved out of Prem Madhurya. He's, as I like to say, Krishna is the byproduct of the love of his devotees. Now, there is certain Prem there, the Absolute is taking particular shape, like with the chisel of their Prem, basically. And then we have, what else? Lila Madhurya, which is very close to Prem Madhurya, because Lila means the Prem-like interaction between he and his devotees. So he has very sweet Leelas, very sweet pastimes, which you don't hear about any other form of Bhagavan. And Venu Madhurya, he has a very sweet flute, or again, a flute through which he who is sweetness personified expresses himself. We could say from that side as well, no? like Balabhacharya is doing in his famous Madhurashtakam. I don't know if you have heard that one. If you have diabetes, I wouldn't recommend you sing that song. You may die. Because Madhuram, 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 Madhuram. He starts to glorify Krishna on all his features, and for each feature, everything about you is sweet, basically, he's saying. Madhuradi Pate Akilam Madhuram. You are the very form of sweetness. Your remnants are sweet, your gopas are sweet, your gopis is sweet, your flute is sweet, And everything, he pronounces everything and immediately Madhuram, and immediately Madhuram. And at the end, he starts to say, Madhuram, 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 Madhuram. He just converges into this idea. He cannot use another word to depict what Krishna is about, basically. No? So Madhuram, no? full of sweetness. So again, this flute is one of the 4 defining qualities that make Krishna Stu Bhagavan Swayam, Swayam Bhagavan. No? He's the supreme personality of Godhead because of his flute, we could say. Because of his Venu-gita. You take out the Venu-gita, you no longer have Swayam Bhagavan there. So these, among other unique qualities, are present in him. So this Venu Madhurya is establishing the ultimacy of Braja Krishna, basically. Because Krishna outside of Vrindavan, he's not playing flute. He's not that inspired in Mathura and Dwarkas to be playing flute, as we know. So in Vrindavan, he's taking shelter in the flute because of a particular love that is there. Again, everything ultimately points to which type of love is there between him and his devotees, the Brajavasis. So again, this Venu-gita, again, the Bhagavatam, before all these Gitas is saying Krishna is Tu Bhagavan Swayam, right at the beginning, which means Krishna is the original form of the Godhead. So how to elaborate upon that, how to explain that in detail, one of those ways is Venu-gita. Because again, this Venu Madhurya is one of the features that make Bhagavan Swayam, Krishna Swayam Bhagavan. So Bhagavatam says Krishna is Tu Bhagavan Swayam, and then it elaborates upon the implications of that. One of this Venu-gita. You pay attention, what's the nature of his flute, and wow, you realize, yes, he must be Supreme Godhead. Also, and in this connection, again, speaking about the flute in connection to the flute call and the love call that Krishna is expressing through that, we have this example that Srila Jiva Goswami is giving in the in their Sandarbhas regarding the, how do you say in English, whistling? That's whistling? Whistling. Okay. So someone may, with the air, with that element, you can try to make a sound, or without even doing that, you can like. But what about if you have a bamboo, you make some holes properly, you make it a bansuri or a bamsi or a flute, and you do the same, you pour the same air, but in a particular container, it goes out very melodically. It's the same air, but taking different forms. So Jiva Goswami makes this contrast regarding what he calls Swarupananda and Swarup Shakti-ananda. So what's the inherent bliss present in Bhagavan himself, and how when that bliss expresses itself outside of him, if you will, and takes a concrete form, concrete devotional form in the form of Radha, Lalita, Madhumangal, Sridham, all these personifications of Ragatmikas, forms of love, that becomes much more pleasing. In the same way, we are speaking about the same thing by expressed in through another particular container, if you will. So when the Swarupananda, or the inherent bliss that Krishna has in himself, expresses in relationship to his devotees, that creates the highest form of bliss, even to himself, called Swarup Shakti-ananda. So this call of the flute, which goes hand by hand with example of Jiva Goswami, the flute call is higher than the whistling, has to do with Krishna expressing his love for his devotees and desperate calling each of them, come to me, please. We will see how the gopis react to that, or how they see the reaction of the whole environment to the song of the flute, basically. So again, this is another one of the reasons why Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. Lila Madhurya, Prem Madhurya. He has a very unique sweet love which he expresses through the flute. And that's in connection to his devotees. So that's Lila, basically. So as I mentioned, this Venu-gita in particular, since it's the first of the 6 songs that we know of, mainly by the gopis in the 10th canto, all of them are expressed in the mood of separation. But since it's the first one, you may suspect which type of separation is depicted in the Venu-gita. What do you think? Yes, Purvarag. So what's the meaning of that? I'm sorry for torturing you with so many new Sanskrit glossary. Be ready for that. But there are mainly four types of separation. Loving separation depicted in Shastra. And there is some chronology to them, at least concerning the first one, which is Purvarag. Then we have Man, Prabhas, and Prem Vaitchitya. But Purvarag has to be the first. Why? Because Purvarag means the separation that you feel from your beloved before officially having met your beloved. So for sure that has to be the first one, because the other three have to do with a separation that comes after union with your beloved. So I will mention briefly each of these four. These are depicted along the 6 songs of the gopis. Now I won't mention in which song which separation is. It's maybe too much for now. But Venu-gita has to do with Purvarag, which means, again, Purva means like previous, basically. That attachment rag that comes previous to a first meeting where both parties acknowledge their love for one another, but they hear about the beloved, or they see him. Different possibilities are there. Rukmini is one famous example of Purvarag also. When she heard about Krishna, she never saw him, but she heard about him, and she saw some drawings and paintings. There was no Instagram at that time, so he was not having any picture. But she heard about him, and that was enough. Purvarag. In the case of the gopis, they are seeing Krishnas, we will see on a daily basis, but still it's not official first meeting, acknowledging, and so on. So that's Purvarag as well. They are totally in love with him, as we will see. And the Venu-gita, the song of the flute, is just like throwing wood to the fire of their passionate love. And then we have Man, which is the separation which comes after two lovers quarrel with each other. There is some sulky mood in one of the two, and that creates some form of separation. Then it's Pravas, which means there are different types of each one of them, as you may imagine. Indians love subcategories. And Pravas means like residing far away. So by the force of circumstance and geographical distance, they have not fought with one another, have not quarreled with one another in this case, but just some physical distance that Krishna going to Mathura or whatever. And then we have Prem Vaitchitya, which is a very unique type of separation. Yesterday we mentioned that, which instead of being union in separation, is separation in union. When, for example, Sri Radha is right in front of Krishna, but somehow, I don't know. Again, the famous example is this one of the bumblebee coming and Madhu Mangal or someone else telling, "Oh, Madhusudan has gone. He took the bumblebee somewhere else." But she thought Madhusudan as the name of Krishna. So, Krishna has gone, and she falls into a swoon of separation while Krishna is just in front of her. So that's Prem Vaitchitya. But again, in this particular Venu-gita, we will study Purvarag. And in the successive 5 Gitas, the other 3 remaining forms of separation will come, because the second one after this one will be Pranaya Gita, which is already, there's a first meeting between Krishna and the gopis in Rasa Leela, so no more Purvarag there. This is a Purvarag song, if you will. So let's finish today by sharing some like little context to the Venu-gita, a little background to the very first verse of the song, which we'll see tomorrow, so we can better understand this Purvarag. Because gopis are in love with Krishna, but what's the nature and dynamics of that love and the circumstances that take them to the point where the Venu-gita will start. And of course, needless to say, but Mahaprabhu himself used to relish this Venu-gita a lot in the Gambhira with Ramananda Roy, with Sarup Damodar. And just for you to know, before giving the context, this Venu-gita will describe the gopis singing while hearing Krishna's flute at the distance during Purvana Lila. So Purvana Lila is one of the 8 divisions of the day, which happens from 8:24 to 10:48 in the morning. So in that particular moment, which is when Krishna is leaving to the forest with his friends and the cows, and something like that, but the flute is what they are hearing actually, and that moment. So the gopis cannot join him again. They are at their homes, and Krishna is going with their friends and cows, and they are dying to join him, basically, or to meet him. And hearing the flute in the distance, so they start to sing and to express how they see the whole environment being affected by that particular sound of the flute. So what's the context? Let me share you some ideas that Srila Jiva Goswami mentions in the Gopal Shampoo. For this series of lectures, we will mostly resort to, of course, to the commentaries by our Goswamis and many other acharyas to this section of the Bhagavatam, and also to books as Sri Gopal Shampoo, which is a commentary, if you will, or an extended expression of the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam. So in Sri Gopal Shampoo, Srila Jiva Goswami mentions that after the killing of Dhenukasur is the, how to say in English, as demon. Sorry, donkey demon. Okay. So this happens in the 15th chapter of the 10th canto. Remember, so Venu-gita is 21st chapter. And this is some chronology there. So after Krishna killing the Dhenukasur, it is said that the attraction of the gopis increased more and more, especially in the case, of course, of Sri Radha. She's having fits, like she's having swoons and losing consciousness and having spurtis of Krishna while she's like fainting and so on. So all this before, again, first official meeting. There has not been official meeting till now. That will happen in the Rasa Lila. So that we have some section till that. So it is said that in this moment, again, Radha and all the gopis are totally in love with Krishna, Purvarag. And it is said that the parents of all the gopis in Braj, like intuitively, Jiva Goswami says, all of them decided, we will marry our daughter to Krishna. All the parents of all the ladies of Braj reached that same consensual, unanimous conclusion without consulting with each other, of course, but like an obvious, natural, converging point. They have to be married with him. And it is said that, interestingly, Nanda and Jashoda, they had internally this type of intuitive attraction, like all the girls of Braj should be married with Krishna also. But especially Radha, they felt. Jiva Goswami mentions that Nanda and Jashoda felt every lady in Braj should be married to our son. But if we cannot pick all of them, especially Sri Radha should be the one. Especially Sri Radha should be the one. So when all the parents of Braj were about to make that official, Garga Acharya comes into the scene, which is kind of the priest in Vrindavan, and he suggests to each and every family, actually it's not the best option to marry your daughters to Krishna, because according to Krishna's astrological chart, it appears there that he at one point will leave Vrindavan, and he will leave Vrindavan, and he starts to give a vision of all the things that will happen, and this will happen with Kamsa. So if he goes out of Vrindavan, and Krishna will have been married with all the ladies in Vrindavan, basically, Kamsa eventually may come to Vrindavan to attack all those families, and who knows what will happen in Vrindavan. So actually the arrangements should be done for all of you to to marry your daughters to someone else. So eventually this news reached the gopis' ears, which they already knew that their parents were thinking about marrying them to Krishna. So they were, of course, brimming with delight. We will be married to Krishna. But gradually the news came no, you will be married to someone else, with someone apart from Krishna. So it is said that all of them unanimously felt, without knowing that the other ones were thinking the same, say, I will be married to someone else. My life has no purpose. I will just jump into Kaliya Ghat. At that point, Kaliya had not been chastised yet. So that side of the Jamuna was poisoned. Poisoned? Yeah. So to end with their life. So each gopi from Vrindavan, you can imagine the scene, leaving their house just like in trance in that direction, and every single gopi in Vrindavan, without knowing that all the other ones were going, and all of them see each other on the shores of the Jamuna, just next to the Kaliya Lake, and start to understand what's going on, how all of them were one in thought, one in hope, and one in decision now. So all of them started to cry, uncontrollably, and try to give support to each other and so on, like fully empathic with the other gopis' hearts, basically. So it is said that Sri Radha was heading the whole group there. So she was leading the way, and all of them took themselves by hand, like a long line of all the gopis of Vrindavan. Imagine the scene, and all of them marching towards the Jamuna, just with one thought in mind, ready to jump, ready to live their lives, and praying to Sri Jamuna Devi, to the river, praying to the Devi which presides over the river. May Sri Nanda and Jasoda become our in-laws. May Krishna become our husband in our next life. And now we'll jump, because no meaning to continue with this life, and so on. So they are about to jump, according to Srila Jiva Goswami in Gopal Temple, and an invisible voice from the sky comes, like usual, as usual, which it describes the Devas playing some role in the Lila, and telling the gopis, do not commit suicide, do not jump, do not end your life, please. Actually, you are wanting to leave your bodies because you are thinking that now your bodies will belong to someone else, and some other man will enter in contact with your bodies, but that won't happen. The voice is telling the gopis, it's impossible for you to associate with someone apart from Krishna. It's not possible for you, even though externally you may have husbands and in-laws and this and that. It's somehow it won't be possible for you to have any actual, real, direct, intimate contact with anyone apart from Krishna. So this is the idea of Parakiya, Swakiya starts to be unfold here. Gopis are in Parakiya with Krishna. With Parakiya means belonging to someone else, but that's only the bhava. You never hear the word Parakiya Tattva. We always hear Parakiya Bhava. In Bhava, they are in Parakiya. Bhava means how it feels. It feels I belong to someone else, but I'm risking everything to meet Krishna. But it's Bhava, it's how it feels. In Tattva, it's not Parakiya, because in Tattva, in facts, basically, in ontological truth, they can only belong to Krishna. So in Tattva, they are in Swakiya, and in Bhava, they're in Parakiya. And that's one of the ways we can explain why our Tattva Acharya, Jiva Goswami, always emphasized in Golok Vrindavan, there is no Parakiya, there is only Swakiya. But that's another chapter. So, so after this voice comes from the sky, protecting the gopis, nobody will touch you, you won't be associated with anyone else apart from Krishna. Three personalities appear into this scene: Purnamasi, Brinda Devi, and Madhu Mangal. All that you need for make the proper arrangement for whatever needs to be happening to happen. All these divine orchestrators in the Leela. Purnamasi, who is Yogamaya personified, coming to confirm, yes, that's a fact. You won't be touched by anyone. Brinda Devi, which is an expansion of that same department, as a Dutika, as a messenger, making all the arrangements. And Madhu Mangal, who is an extension of them in the context of Sakya Rasa, basically, being such a facilitator as a Priyanarma Sakya. To all of them appear in a scene Jiva Goswami describes how at that moment Sri Radha is given Lalita, Sakya, and Visakha Devi as her personal friends and assistants to give support to her in this new stage of her life. And Brinda is assigned as a Dutika, as a messenger who will orchestrate the whole Lila. And Madhu Mangal offer himself to Krishna, like, I belong to you, I will live with you, and he will be the one assisting. Of course, Krishna was not there at that moment, but that will happen with Madhu Mangal, and he will start from that moment on living in a little bit before even, but in this precise moment, he's showing his role as a Priyanarma Sakha, helping Krishna to cope with his Purvarag, because he also is experiencing Purvarag. It's not only the gopis are going through the separation before meeting, Krishna himself is doing that. So in this way, all the characters of the Leela are entering into their particular roles for the eventual union to happen. All this is being like, we'll see how very expertly Yogamaya is creating like the momentum that finally will converge into the union of Radha and Krishna, the union of the gopis with Radha Krishna. So, but it's all gradual, and all the ingredients or all the characters of the Leela are crucial. We are not so much of the idea, we only care for the gopis, we only care for this, we don't want to hear about that other rasa, but all of them are really instrumental for all this to happen. So eventually the gopis get married, at least most of them, with someone else, as we mentioned, at least externally as part of the organizing of Yogamaya for the Leela. So they are living generally in the social dynamics of the Leela. When the girl is married, she goes to live to her, how to say in English, in-laws house. So you can imagine, for the gopis, before being married to Krishna, but still not being able to meet him, their own houses were like prisons, because they were not able to freely meet him. So how, if their previous houses were prisons, how must they feel now their in-laws houses being married to someone else? No? That's even more. But of course, this is Purnamasi's arrangement to increase their longing, and also Purnamasi's arrangement is gopis do not have any type of intimate contact with their so-called husbands. Our church generally use that term, so-called husbands. We need to have someone doing that role there, but there's actually no, you always hear, no, like that Abhimanyu is always sleeping in the cow barn, and he has been gone to buy new bulls. He's somehow or other, there's always something happening for him never to be with Radha, an intimacy or something. And of course, not only Yogamaya will create all these things, but she will, as we will see eventually, create replicas of the gopis which stay at home when they leave at night the house for meeting Krishna. So again, everything is perfectly in place and orchestrated. So it is in this particular context that the Venu-gita will be expressed. Now, this is the point we are now. Now, the gopis are burning into the ocean of separation, which is another forest fire, basically. Sometimes samsara is called forest fire, but they are going through another forest fire in separation from Krishna. There's another type of samsaras, we always say. Samsara means samsara, complete essence. Also samsara. So they are in a particular forest fire like samsara. And as we will see, the only way they can find relief in the fire of separation is by hearing about Krishna, singing about Krishna, and associating with other like-minded people, which is basically exactly what we are trying to do in our particular Purva Rag. Because we are in, maybe there's not that much Rag, but I don't know, in my case at least, but if there is a particular separation we can experience from Krishna now, it's only Purva Rag, because it's a separation before meeting Krishna for the first time, officially. And as we know, this separation, as we will see, has a lot of purposes. It's really increasing the joy of union, is allowing union to happen, basically, because if there's no separation, there's no union. If you are with someone forever without never separating, there's no union, because union means there has been something different from that before that. So you need separation for that, as part of the dynamics of the Lila, to upgrade the love between Krishna and his devotees. And of course, part of this separation, and specifically in the context of Parakya Bhav, is the nature of the Parakya Bhav, which is to be a love full of obstacles. Rupa Goswami describes Parakya Bhav as a love which is secret, which is like clandestine, you may say, but especially which is full of obstacles. Imagine Sri Radha living in her house in Jabat. She's surrounded by the whole dysfunctional family, basically. So if you get a glimpse of Jatila, Kutila, and Abhimanyu, I mean, one is more dysfunctional than the other. No, totally crooked and not trusting and creating all day different ideas, and I mean, with good reason, if you will. But there, she's always surrounded by people who is suspecting of her and never trusting her, and wanting to increase their wealth and family and riches, and she has to go through all these obstacles on a daily basis to meet Krishna every single day. That is to say, that's why Mahaprabhu, he likes so much to hear. When Mahaprabhu was hearing the Bhagavatam in Jagannath Puri, give me please 5 more minutes, from Gadadhar Pandit, you may wonder, well, what will he hear? As you may wonder, when he instructed Raghunath Das Goswami, what did he say? He said, do not gossip. Oh, Mahaprabhu is hearing Bhagavatam from Gadadhar, which most esoteric section is hearing. But the most sections he heard was Dhruva Charit and Prahlad Charit. 4th canto, 7th canto, nothing 10th canto, for not nothing, something, but generally he was hearing the pastimes of Dhruva Maharaj, the pastimes of Prahlad Maharaj, and he will hear them one time and he will ask Gadadhar again. And second time, the same story. Mahaprabhu said, again. And like this 100 times, Prahlad Charit, and 108, and never enough. And of course, there are many reasons why he was insisting in those sections. He may be teaching us first, before going to the most esoteric thing, you have to have the Santa Rasa foundation we spoke yesterday in place. But also, in a more esoteric sense, we could say Mahaprabhu was so fond of those sections because he's Krishna culturing the mood of Radha. And the mood of Radha for Krishna is this parakya and this overcoming of obstacles. And if you hear Prahlad Maharaj's life, that's full of obstacles. If you hear Dhruva Maharaj's life, that's a lot. He had to go through so many difficulties as well. So Mahaprabhu was hearing these stories, but relating them to what Radha has to go through on a daily basis in her parakya for Krishna. That's another way to understand why he was asking. And teaching us how the obstacles, quote unquote obstacles, are not that much of an obstacle if you have the proper, if you have the proper stance, there's no obstacles. And if you want to still to speak in terms of obstacles, those obstacles are just acting like udipana or like stimulant. Like if you want to meet your beloved and you put some obstacles in the way, if you really want to meet your beloved, those obstacles will just like increase your longing. It's not like, oh, there's an obstacle, I don't want to meet my beloved. That means you didn't actually want to meet your beloved. Even before the obstacles, you thought you were. So we have so many stories like this. Now, Goswami is wanting to join Mahaprabhu, and Sanatan Goswami is going to jail. Raghunath Das Goswami is in the jail of his house. Gopal Bhatta Goswami, Mahaprabhu tells, wait that your fathers pass away and then you can join me. He never saw him again. Like this. So so many quote unquote obstacles, but their longing, their passionate desire was just increasing. So that's the idea. So many stories like this. Lokanath Goswami, Srinivasacharya, so many. Kunti Devi praying to Krishna, send me obstacles. Because through those obstacles, Apunar Bhava Darshana, she's saying, we can see you over and over again. you could take that prayer, famous prayer of Kunti Devi, in that light. Krishna, please send me obstacles, because the more the obstacles come, the more we take further shelter in you, and our longing for you increases. So the more we see you basically in those obstacles. So if I see you in those obstacles, how much the obstacle remains an obstacle. If an obstacle is revealing me Krishna, how much it deserves to be called an obstacle. And everything has the potential to reveal Krishna to us. So everything is a potential non-obstacle. But if we are not properly situated, even the most comfortable situation is an obstacle, because it's covering your vision from reality. So basically that idea. Tomorrow today I wanted to share this brief introduction and some context to the underlying background to this Purva Rag that will be expressed in the Venu-gita. And tomorrow we will begin officially with the first 4 verses, which are kind of introductory to the scene, to the song in itself of the gopis, with Krishna is entering the forest and so on. Technically speaking, again, there are 20 verses in the whole chapter, not 21, 20. But the song of the gopis will begin in verse 7, and will end in verse 19. So some will say the Venu-gita is technically from verse 7 to 19, but the first 6 verses and the last one are giving some introduction and some conclusion. So generally our acharyas is called the whole chapter Venu-gita, the very chapter is called Venu-gita. So we'll start singing them tomorrow. So we can finish here. I don't know if there are any questions that are extremely urgent and you won't be able to sleep properly tonight, so you have to present them. He has one, Zach. Yes. We want Zach to have sweet dreams tonight, so present your question.
So, I've been trying to slowly improve my knowledge, and I had a question. I was thinking about so much emphasis is placed on gopis and Krishna, and from what you said today, I was making association with the devotees and the gopis. Like, could it be considered that like we are gopis in a sense? Like devotees are gopis trying, like representation of gopis trying to attain Krishna. Is that the right way of thinking about it?
Basically, I'll repeat briefly the question because maybe the ones here won't be hearing you. Zach was asking him if it's possible to think of us devotees or the devotees as being represented in the gopis, or the gopis being representing the devotees in connection to what they represent and what the devotees should look after as devotees and so on. So we could say yes and no, of course. No, we can we can mention that in certain things we can speak about the gopis surrender, or as I mentioned now, like taking obstacles as something that will nourish one's hankering. And in that sense, I'm speaking about that in the case of the gopis, but this is not limited to the gopis, of course. I mean, if you see everyone else in Vrindavan, they are doing the same thing spontaneously. Whatever so-called obstacle is coming, that's just increasing their passion for Krishna. And of course, so in that sense, no, it's not that every devotee is a gopi. Of course, again, we can make some comparison. In that sense, we can speak as if they will be the same thing. One thing implies the other. If to be a gopi means to be nourished through obstacles, yes, that is expected from a devotee, but that's not all that being a gopi is about. So when we start to study more and to understand more, which is the psychology and the way in which the gopi gives herself in service to Krishna, that's not something that will be applied to each and every devotee, because not necessarily every devotee will be inclined to serve Krishna in the mood of the gopis. And as we mentioned before, it's not that every devotee already has some particular affinity in an inherent way, that you are from factory, you are already a gopi or something like that, but that's something that you acquire through association, which is whether you are gopi or gopa, because mostly those are the two options in Vrindavan. Everyone is gopi or gopa, whether it's Madhurya, Sakya, Vatsalya, whatever, is full of gopis and gopas. So that has to be acquired, but the foundation of all that is many of the things we spoke yesterday, or this notion also of dasya, of giving ourselves in service. And also we, as we may emphasize gopis and Krishna, of course there is an emphasis in that. There are so many other emphases, like you will see, for example, from these days when our Guru Maharaj will speak about Brahma Mohan Lila, you will find another type of emphasis there, which is also beautiful and complementary. But also we emphasize Gaur Lila and what we as devotees, sadhakas, practitioners have to embrace very overtly in the form of surrender and saranagati and submission, in a proper way, in an intelligent way, not like in a forced, brain dead way, but in a deep way, in order to eventually discover one's affinity, if you will, in Vrindavan. Because again, if you start to ask, maybe I'm a gopi, maybe I'm a gopa, you may not have a clue, but for sure you know who you should be now as a practitioner, as a sadhaka, as a disciple, as a student. There are certain things that are expected from us. So it's nice to have discipline in that sense, like to be introspective and look at ourselves and look how we can become a better devotee, and eventually all the other things will come accordingly. There's no even need to think too much about that. So yeah, again, in certain ways we can say every devotee is a gopi, but only in some things that the gopis represent, but that other devotees also represent. So in that sense, you can say also every devotee is a gopa, because you will see a gopa doing. But in another sense, you cannot say every devotee is a gopi nor a gopa, because every devotee won't be only that option. So yeah, no rush. In time, we will get further educated, and all of us continue learning, and all the things will fall into place. So I hope you have sweet dreams tonight, Zach. So something else? These days we will have also Q&A once a week. So if there's place for that as well, but just in case there is something urgent. Okay, so we'll finish here and we continue tomorrow. Tomorrow we continue officially beginning with Sri Venu-gita. Srila Gurudev ki jai, Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Sri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Sri Dauji Gopal ji ki jai, Grantara Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Venu-gita ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Preman, Hari Bol. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuvya cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Ananta koti vaishnava vrinda ki